Hello, Canada. Hello, United States of America. Greetings to all of you here in Panama and all over the planet. My name is Kevin J. Johnston. This is the Kevin J. Johnston Show, the political show that runs every single Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have an incredible guest on the show tonight, somebody who's had the unfortunate displeasure of being in the same room with Justin Trudeau a few times, who is our national banking expert, Rob Anders. He'll be joining us in about 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, wow, do we have a lot to talk about tonight. First off, everybody, you'll notice that I've got another Instagram account. All right, here's the thing with Instagram, everybody. Instagram says if you want to get traffic on your Instagram channel and you want people to interact with you and you want more traffic and you want people to follow you, that you absolutely 100% must make comments on people's videos. Okay, so I do. And what does it say? Oh, I'm spamming. I'm spamming by uttering a little bit of discontent at, the LGBTQ, a little bit of discontent at those who think that Canada is in good financial situations. Oh, the other one is the discontent of adults getting involved in stupid TikTok trends, which somehow are now on Instagram. So Instagram says that this is the fifth account now where I'm spamming. So I've made this decision. I'm not making any comments on anyone's video. I'm just going to put a ton of videos up and just go out of my way to do nothing except exercise my right to put up my own content and comment on only my own content. Sick. And for those who want to know, here in the country of Panama, what currency do they use? The US dollar, of course. Why would they use anything different? They do have their own currency called the Balboa here, but it's tethered directly to the US dollar. And as a result of that, they don't print bills. They only print the 50-cent piece, and they print the quarter, and they print the Balboa, which is the $1 coin. Beyond that, you'll never see paper bills with Panama anything on it because they just don't bother printing bills here, because the US dollar will do just fine. And I really, 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 really like the way American money looks and feels. Don't you? It looks like money. It feels like money. Hold on, check this out. Remember when Canada went to that plastic polymer crap? Well, look who else did it. Costa Rica. Costa Rica did the same thing with, the transparency. It's plastic or whatever. It's horrible. So you can't rip it because it's not paper. Not that you should be ripping money anyway. I don't care about the illegality behind it. I'm just thinking it's kind of stupid to take something that has intrinsic value and make it have no value. Dumb. But this plastic money stuff, I hate. I love handling the US dollar. And you'll find that here in Panama, everything is incredibly inexpensive and everybody uses cash, which is the advice that our guest has given us on 5 separate occasions now. Continue to use cash before cash no longer exists. So in tonight's show, Rob Anders is going to be talking to me about oil, gold, and silver-backed currencies. But I did, before he comes on, want to explain a few things to all of you. And that is, if you are in Canada right now, or any of the Democrat states in the US, or in the United Kingdom right now, or Ireland, or the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, wherever you might happen to be, if you're wondering why it is, with your lovely white skin, you're broke. It's because it's being done completely on purpose. It has been done by the so-called elites, and your governments are stepping in line with it. Your governments are going out of their way to cooperate with this nonsense, and then they're blaming you and imprisoning you when you criticize all of that. How to make money if you're in Canada or a Democrat state? You got to leave. That's how you do it. You got to leave. Now, everyone's asking me, why am I successful here in Panama? I've only been in Panama for 6 months now. Why am I successful? Why am I making between $10,000 and $20,000 a week? Here's the biggest one. And this is one that I would like all of you to pay attention to. Never mind what I actually do to make the money. First off, it's legal. But it's this one here. Clarity of thought. In Canada, there's the radical left, screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs about the stupidest, most asinine garbage imaginable, and they get all the press. You've got grown adults saying there are 72 genders, and they're shouting this stuff on the streets everywhere. And the media says, good for them. The media is telling you that's a good thing. These same individuals are going to Christian churches and screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs and pulling their pants down in front of kids. And the media says, this is good. It's not. When I see these things, it removes my capacity to think like a businessman because I'm so hurt and disgusted by what I'm seeing. Because you pull that crap in the 70s, well, there wouldn't be much of you left. I can tell you that right now. But we can't deal with these people in the fashion in which we need to deal with them to get it to end. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. The left wing runs all 5 branches of government and the judiciary. So no matter where you go, if you are a conservative Christian, you are going to be guilty of whatever they say you are. And those who were assaulting you and stealing from you and insulting you and doing vast quantities of property damage to what you have and churches, they get to walk away scot-free. All of them. It's very difficult to think like a businessman when that is what surrounds you everywhere. And I figured that when I left Toronto and went to Calgary, 2 time zones away, that nonsense would not be there to any particular type of degree that you could recognize. But man, was I wrong. Holy smoke. The Antifa maniacs out there, the kids who don't want to achieve anything, the kids who don't want to be anything, the kids who have the wrongest possible mindset about where they live and what their place is in where they live are out there absolutely destroying positively everything. How can one open a business up where groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter are allowed to walk around town and trash your stuff? And you can't even punch them in the face because you're the one that is committing a hate crime when that happens. No, I can't be successful in Canada because that nonsense is absolutely everywhere. And then, of course, you all remember the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They don't like me at all. They can't stand me. They wanted to make a point. They wanted to prove to me just how much power they had over me and how little I had by grabbing their guns and threatening my 9-year-old niece. Think about that. How does one concentrate on building a better life when that's the case? And our guest actually had his house raided and destroyed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for nothing. And he'll tell you all about that again tonight, I'm sure. So these are the things that stop you, some of the things that stop you from thinking about the best way to succeed. But let's imagine for a second you had some clarity of thought, that you're an expert at ignoring all of it. Well, if you're going to open up a business in Canada and the banks find out that you've got anti-LGBTQ viewpoints, what are they going to do? They're going to shut your bank accounts down. They have done this now to 3 of my clients. And these clients, I tell all my clients, don't tell people you know me. All right. Keep that quiet. But they made public displays of saying, I don't want pride flags near my business. Then the pride losers complain to the local bank, and all of them, because they don't know where the clients bank. But then every bank just goes looking and saying, yeah, you know what? We're going to shut this guy down. He's banked with us for 37 years, but we're going to shut him down. So how could you possibly get a business running when you've got about a third of the entire country deliberately trying to sabotage every effort that you put forward, including the banks? Now, you all know that I fixed people's taxes in Canada. And what I have also come to realize is that the banks are the culprits when it comes to the Canada Revenue Agency making demands of the banks to give your money to them. When the Canada Revenue Agency says to the bank, hey, this is a requirement to pay. This guy didn't pay taxes. Give us the money. The CRA does not go into the account and take it. The bank says, yeah, no problem. Here. It's the banks that are completely at fault. The banks cooperate with that. And the banks say, well, you have to because it's the law. No, it's not. It's not. So how can you possibly feel safe about putting your money into the bank when it's the banks who elect, who choose to just give it to the CRA? It's completely illegal, I might add. It is absolutely theft, and you can absolutely charge them criminally, but the average Canadian doesn't understand that you can do these things. So Canadians have no faith in their banking system, and I highly recommend that you don't have any faith in it whatsoever. We have no faith in our police. Every Canadian out there thinks that the cops are out to get them, and you're correct to think that, because the police have been mandated by most of the municipalities right across the country Go pull people over and give them tickets, even if they're not guilty. And cops, right? Well, I'm just following orders. Right. So we have cops stealing from us every day. And then in Canada, we also have what's called the administrative penalty system. So if you get a ticket in a province of Ontario or the province of Manitoba, you're guilty until proven innocent. You actually have to prove innocence. They don't have to prove guilt. So you just get money stolen from you, which means on a moment's notice, if they want your money, they're just going to go and write you tickets, and you can't do anything about it. Well, you can. You can revolt. You can use egregiously disgusting, violent tactics against these people. They will stop going to work if you do, but that's illegal, unfortunately. And I'm not recommending that you do it. I'm just saying that, unfortunately, our society has crumbled to the point where the only solution to all of these problems is violence. So did I want to stay in Canada and keep thinking about ways to use violence to have a little bit of a life? Or did I want to get rich? And I thought, I want to get rich. Who cares about the left wing? If I don't have to be near these idiots, I don't care. If I don't have to bank in Canada, I don't care. If I don't have to be around these far left-wing 450-pound lesbian cops screaming, "I hate men" at the top of their lungs, great. I don't have to be near them. And I'm not. In fact, I'm in a country right now. I've been living in Panama for 6 months. I'm in a country where police are not allowed to be fat, right? They're all fit, all of them. They're thin. They fit in their costume. They're not uniforms. They fit in their costumes, but they actually look respectable. How many times have you seen lesbian idiots in cop costumes in Canada with mohawks and really stupid men's haircuts with like pattern shave in the side and guts that are out to here, sitting on top of their legs when they have a seat? Yeah. How many times have you seen them have to use margarine to grease the door to get into the police car and have 3 other cops with shoehorns to force them in? I'm sick of it. You don't see any of that nonsense here in Panama. Everything in Panama is respectable. That's why I have clarity of thought here in Panama. That's why I'm making money here in Panama. You got to get away from the nonsense. You have to get away from your supposed comfort zone, everybody, because a lot of you think that Canada is comfortable. And it's not Canada that's comfortable. It's your patterns and habits that are comfortable to you. I caught myself getting into a pattern even in Calgary. Every morning, I'd wake up, I'd take a 3-kilometer walk to the nearest McDonald's, get myself a cup of coffee, drink it, get a refill, walk back, and then do nothing with my day. Because I had so many court orders against me, stopping me from having jobs, stopping me from looking for full-time work, stopping me from speaking publicly. I couldn't do anything with my day. So I got myself into a pattern that was not self-destructive, but in no way, shape, or form advanced my life or my knowledge base. So I left. And here I am. And I'm enjoying every minute of it. But unfortunately, our guest, Rob Anders, a former member of parliament, is still stuck in that communist dump. But that's okay. He's joining us right now. Doctor, it's so good to see you again. Dr. Anders, everybody, how are you? Yeah, I know you're not.
I'm good. I'm in Canada Valley, Saskatchewan, campaigning for the Sask United Party. John Rummock is a guy who ran an oil company with 500 employees, sold it, and is looking to enter the legislature and cut taxes and bring some common sense to the province. So I've been campaigning with them.
So a businessman wants to run for office.
Yeah, he's smart. He knows how to read a balance sheet. He can tell where the government's hiding money and where they're wasting money. And he wants to cut the PST from 6% down to 3%. He wants to give seniors a break on the property tax of 65% if they're over 65. He wants to create safe spaces for women so that men aren't using their bathrooms and their change rooms. It's a breath of fresh air. It's nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is a beautiful thing. And only businessmen and economists should be allowed to run for public office. That's how I see it. I mean, my favorite example, Donald J. Trump, who ran the United States of America like the corporation that it is, like a business, not as an ATM. That guy lost $2 billion of his own personal wealth, putting his own personal wealth out to do a better job as president. He's a businessman, and the country flourished for a short period of time. Then they, of course, that COVID nonsense came up. But Rob,
maybe Kevin went down, but I just like to say that campaigned for Donald Trump in Muscatine, Iowa. This was.
Oh no, we're losing them. Oh boy. Saskatchewan's not known for the best internet going. Hey, Lori.
Oh, is it the problem on my end?
Oh, it's definitely on your end. So yeah, unless are you not seeing me? Because I see me, Krista. Are you seeing me?
I am.
Everyone.
I see you, sir. Yes, I do.
Okay, very good. So you said you were campaigning for Trump in Iowa. Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, I was down in Muscatine, Iowa in 2016, and most people haven't heard of Muscatine, Iowa. I hadn't heard of Muscatine until that point, but I went down to a Trump rally there. And Iowa is, of course, where the Iowa caucuses happen before the New Hampshire primary. So it's the first place where a presidential candidate really gets a test run. And that was fascinating because you could see that people were coming in from a long distance. They had a big stadium because football is a huge thing in Iowa, even high school football. It was like a Canadian college-size stadium, like they have at the University of Calgary for the Dinos. Huge stadium, holds thousands of people. And people came in, and you had to park basically a kilometer away to get in. By the time that I got there, we booked 3 days in advance. By the time that I got there, you couldn't even get in there. All you could see was him on the jumbotrons from the parking lot type of thing. So you realized, and I've been to a lot of different political rallies in the United States, people running for president when McCain was running, etc. And you could tell that people were really packing out en masse, and they wanted to hear what this guy had to say. You're very interested in his platform.
I'm always interested in this guy's platform. Look, I've been a Trump fan for a very long time, and you have to salute a guy who can lose $4 billion, pretty much go bankrupt, and rebuild that same amount of money back twice, not once, but twice. This guy's unreal. And he knew that the only place that a big mouth like him could acquire that kind of wealth was the United States of America, where showmanship makes money. Good for him. He figured it out. And then he wanted to give something back to the people that made him wealthy. Or it could just be that being president of the United States was a really good business move for him and will continue the family legacy, which I'm also okay with. His son seems to think just like he does, and I'm excited about that. And if only we had some real politician in office now who thought like both of those guys. But seemingly this gentleman you're working with does. Maybe, Rob, you could tell everybody out there a bit more about you, your political background in Canada, your political affiliations, and go.
Sure. Well, I started with the Reform Party. I was elected in 1997, June 2nd, I believe, and spent 18 and a half years in Ottawa. We went from Preston Manning with the Reform Party to Stockwell Day with the Canadian Alliance, and then eventually the Conservative Party with Harper. I chaired Veterans Affairs as a co-chair of Scrutiny of Regulations and the Library of Parliament, various committees. I served in every committee there was in the House of Commons in my time that I was there. I've taken a real interest in central bank digital currency and the follies that I think are entailed with that since I heard various politicians saying they thought it was inevitable. And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound right. And so, I've been reading up on, what people like Warren Buffett has to say about gold. Right. You may not want to own it just in and of itself as a security of value, but maybe gold stocks where they're producing it, that type of thing. I've just recently picked up the book that Paul Volcker put out, Keeping at It, when he was chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he was somebody who defended the gold standard for a very long time, and then was worried that there wasn't enough gold being produced to offset, if you will, the growth in the economy. And so then they wanted to basically make sure that the US dollar was as solvent and secure a currency as possible. And so managed that. And then Alan Greenspan took over from him. Greenspan, I've read some stuff about Greenspan's thought as well on that. And he was an advocate of Ayn Rand and objectivism. And he was a very big gold bug back in 1966. Took over from Volcker, realizing the United States had pulled off the gold standard in 1971, August 15th with Nixon. And so, now I think we know that gold and silver are real money. But if we're going to allow any flexibility for countries with regard to that, You can use oil. The United States, since 1973, has used the idea that all Saudi Arabian oil will be bought and paid for in U.S. dollars. The Saudis have just unhinged from that agreement, so that's going to be complicated potentially for the United States and for the rest of the world. But these are real things: gold, silver. Some might argue, platinum, copper for the Romans and the Chinese, going back historically. Oil. Those are real things. And in Canada's case, for example, we have no gold reserve. My offices used to be in East Block, where downstairs we had 3 vaults that held Canada's gold bullion reserve. We now have effectively nothing. There's only a little bit of gold in Winnipeg and Ottawa for the minting of coins. But when you look at other countries, the United States, even though they don't allow for direct transference of gold with regard to their dollars, they still have the largest collection in the world, the U.S. Treasury, with 8,000 tons of gold. You have Germany that is now growing in its gold supply with about 3,500 tons. You have Italy and France with just over 2,000 tons each. Both China used to claim having 3,000 tons of gold, but that's dropped. Russia still claims to have 2,000 tons of gold. I don't trust either China or Russia, especially Russia with all the debts they're paying for with their war in Ukraine. If I was the Chinese selling them bullets or AK-47s or whatever, drones, etc., I would probably be stripping the Russians off of whatever gold they have left. So this BRICS idea that they're somehow going to challenge the United States, I think, is nonsense upon stilts, as Jeremy Bentham would have said, because if they don't have even a fraction, maybe 1/5, 1/4, 1/5 maybe, of what the rest of the countries that back the U.S. in terms of the international currency have, then I don't, it's not.
Oh,
Did I disappear again? What happened there? In terms
yeah,
of
a little bit there, a little bit. Yeah. All right.
I don't
So
know if I'm gone or you're gone.
making,
I'm not sure.
yes. So Rob,
I
you're
see
making a
me,
very
but I don't see you.
Yeah, I don't think you're hearing me. Damn. Well, I think
Anyhow,
what we
I'll
have
just maybe keep on talking, hoping that if you're not
hold
there,
on.
that
Can you hear me now?
see me. I don't know what to tell you. There's also a book that I ran across recently, very interesting. Sedley Cudmore. He was an Oxford trained statistician, mathematician, economist, etc. He's Canadian, and he wrote a book about the.
Okay. All right. Looks like Rob's having some trouble. Oh, yeah. We just lost his internet signal. All right. So, yeah, he is in the middle of Saskatchewan right now, everybody. And the middle of Saskatchewan's not known for the best of anything. In fact, Saskatchewan, just so you know, has a lot of problems with internet and a lot of problems with telephone because government subsidies have actually ended in that province. Anybody who wants to know what Saskatchewan's all about, just go to Google Maps and have a look at how big it is, but also how remote it is. And internet is something that the government had subsidized for the longest time. So realistically speaking, if you were going to get internet lines out to Saskatchewan, you'd be paying somewhere around $1,000 a month for internet, which of course is completely unreasonable. And farmers wouldn't farm because they wouldn't live there. But that because all that's dropping off, all the subsidies are dropping off, we have poor internet like what we're experiencing right now. So for that, we do apologize, everybody. And Rob is back. All right. Uh-oh. Rob?
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Now, somebody suggested I take a picture.
Yeah. So you know what, Rob? Just go audio only and kill your camera. How's that sound? And I think we're losing Rob again. Oh man, this is
somebody Christine suggested that you just post a picture of me and then
yeah, you know what?
We save bandwidth and it's a video that people see of me. Maybe that's a way to go.
Yeah, just kill your camera and go audio only. That's the way to do this.
I apologize for the sketchy reception Wi-Fi in Canada Valley.
Okay, so wow, that's really unfortunate, everyone. He'll come back in and we'll get him just to kill his video and go directly to audio only. So what Rob is saying here is that Canada very foolishly just threw away sold to China all of our gold reserves. And what Rob is also talking about is the fact that the Canadian dollar is not backed by anything, because our government really isn't smart enough to realize, you know what, our currency should be backed by something. Canada has wheat and fresh water and wood and beef and gold and silver and diamonds, oil. Canada has all of the above. Why are we not using all those things to back our currency? So, Rob, we got you back here. Please, by all means, let's talk a little bit about currencies not being backed by gold or silver, because we know that Canada sold all of its gold reserves off. I'd like you to explain a bit about that, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, governments, both conservative and liberal, sad to say, decided that we weren't going to have anything to back the currency and took us off the gold standard. I just want to say, we had a beautiful system in Canada from 1817 until 1914. We had a free banking system, the longest lasting 97-year long free banking system in the world, where as long as, say, the Imperial Bank or Toronto Dominion or CIBC, you name it, whatever bank in Nova Scotia, had enough gold or silver on hand, they could issue their own currency. And the beautiful thing about that is that it's not all controlled by the government. I mean, the government sets the regulation over saying how much gold or silver do you have to hold in reserve in order to issue so much currency. They have to regulate it in that respect. But it means that it's not all something the government is doing, and frankly, you're better off with that, to be honest. But then, when the government took it all over because they wanted to print money effectively in the First World War, as a lot of countries did, that's a problem. And then eventually what winds up happening, and Sedley Cudmore, who wrote a book about this, who I've ordered, he's a guy who's an Oxford-trained economist, Canadian, who wrote about all this in his book that he published in 1929. He says, eventually you move to fiat currency, and you have a fractional reserve, and then eventually you get rid of any type of tie whatsoever, and then governments just print money. And this whole central bank digital currency stuff is so that governments can just print money without having anything to back it whatsoever. And they can also, because it's very controlling as well, that's the key thing with central bank digital currency, is they can say, well, Kevin, if we don't like what you're spending the money on, we're going to expire your money. If you don't buy an electric vehicle, then your money's going to expire. If you don't use it within 3 months to stimulate the economy, it's going to expire. If we think that you're not meeting the diversity, equity, and inclusion benchmarks that we want, then you're in trouble. If you're buying too much gasoline, too much ammunition, we don't like that. You've exceeded your quota, etc. All you have to do is look at communist China and what they're doing with the digital yuan, and you realize where central bank digital currency is going, China being the prime driver, because they don't want to have free floating currency. They like the idea that they set an exchange rate for their digital yuan with other central banks, and then that's it. And if they do that, then they don't have to worry about Chinese citizens who don't trust their government and want to move Chinese money, any money, whatever, offshore, which is why the Vancouver real estate market is so heated, because those people would rather own a place that they don't live in that sprouts weeds than trust to have their money in a Chinese digital yuan bank.
Well, that's a very good point. We call that concrete bank accounts, where you buy up properties that you can afford and you have no intentions of using, just to hide the money from the government. Rob, I just did a deal last week for 2 Canadians who did exactly that. Same idea. The DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense, got their bank account shut down. So I helped them move their money into the United States, then helped them get their money down here to Panama, and then they bought a condominium. They have no intentions of living in it. They're going to be renting it out on Airbnb. Good for them. But it's going to go up in value because they bought in a neighborhood that's being completely gentrified right now. Good for them. So Canadians are now doing the same thing, leaving Canada with their money that the Chinese are doing from China. It's just that, see, this whole thing about race, for whatever the reason, they're not white, so they can buy as much as they want. That's how our government views everything, especially in British Columbia. So they're Chinese. Let's let them buy as many of these places as they like, and they don't have to live in them. And we're not going to penalize them. We're not going to give them any vacancy taxes or anything else. And here we are with Vancouver. I don't know if anyone has seen it lately, but it's covered completely full of god awful looking blue glass towers with uninspiring architecture completely. And the buildings are about 75% empty. They're sold out, but they're 75% empty. So, Rob, let's talk about that for a second. When the Chinese are buying up the west coast of Canada and leaving 75% of vertical real estate empty, what does that actually mean for the city, the region, and the province? Go ahead.
Well, it makes it a lot harder for, Canadians, old stock Canadians, shall we say, to go ahead and buy a home. I mean, the prices in Vancouver are far out of the reach of people with average salaries. It reminds me almost of London, where you have to be like a .com millionaire or something like that to be able to own the private properties that we might be accustomed to in other parts of Canada. But yeah, I understand why the Chinese want to get their money out. They have a terribly corrupt system that jails their richest people, that penalizes them, that restricts their freedom of speech, all those types of things. And so people are looking to get their money out. Canada's a place that allows them to. But, it's interesting, like Trudeau just recently tried to distract from his Liberal MPs, 40, some of them, I understand, wanting him to resign. I'm shocked it took them this long for him to be trailing Pierre Poilievre by 20 points in the polls. It took him this long. But anyhow, so finally 40 Liberal MPs have got up the gumption to say, we don't want you to kill our jobs, never mind yours. But then he goes ahead and he attacks India. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I mean, China's got far worse record in terms of, weaponizing our coronavirus from the lab in Winnipeg to take it to Wuhan, in terms of the political entryism by some of the MPs in his own caucus that were thrown out, tossed out of parliament, except for like China's got a way worse record on these types of economic, political, subversion. And I thought, well, how come he hasn't taken a stand with regard to that? Well, I guess the obvious answer is because they frankly wanted him to win the last election. That's why. It's just, it's pathetic, right? I mean, he goes ahead and he pokes a finger in the eye of the Indians, who are frankly more, along our wavelength as a worldview goes than the Chinese are. And he's not doing anything. I haven't heard of anybody charged, never mind convicted, with regard to the leaks in the Winnipeg lab where coronavirus was literally stolen by People's Liberation Army scientists and taken to Wuhan. I mean, there's surely somebody should have been held responsible for that.
Well, I have far too much experience with the court system in Canada to ever think that anything would be done to any of them. And that is why Canadians are starting to catch on that we should not be having confidence in any of our government institutions. I mean, what you just said there is that a virus is allowed to leave Canada and go to Wuhan and become dangerous worldwide. No one knows anything. The RCMP are not going to investigate the party in charge. We know that. And of course, the party in charge can tell the RCMP, we're giving you orders now. Don't investigate us, because the Royal Canadian Mounted Police do not swear an oath to the crown or the king or the queen, but just an oath to follow orders. So the good little sheep that they are. Yeah, I have no confidence in the Canadian system whatsoever. That includes every single solitary branch of government. I don't know, Rob, how you feel about that, but you know what? Why don't you answer that one? What are your thoughts on every branch of government here? Okay.
Sure. Well, yeah, let me just talk about Mr. Trudeau for a second, then I'll kind of scope out from there. But, if Trudeau might be able to try to hoodwink Canadians to say, oh, I didn't know that, somebody who was involved with the People's Liberation Army is Okay, I'm back, hopefully. But, it's one thing for him to pretend naivete with regard to that. But after CSIS and the RCMP point out to him, and everybody else, frankly, that that's exactly what happened, that, we had stuff stolen from the lab in Winnipeg. Well, then, after you know that, if you go ahead and buy enough what they call vaccines, I call jabs.
Uh-oh. Froze again. Oh, no. Oh, that's Central Canada. In the year 2024, everybody, you're seeing what Central Canada has to offer in the way of internet. Geez, why is it that Canada's economy sucks? Oh, I know why. Because the Canadian infrastructure is crumbling and the Canadian telecommunications networks are completely crumbling, and everything is being done old school and with copper lines and not fiber optics. I mean, here I am in Panama, and the internet's gone out, I think, 6 times for about 2-3 minutes at a time since I got here 6 months ago. So I do apologize, everybody. We'll get Rob back in as quickly as he's able to log back in. Part of what we're talking about here are some of the reasons why we're having economic difficulties in Canada. You're seeing it right now. We have someone who has gone toe-to-toe with Justin Trudeau in Parliament, someone who's been a member of Parliament for 18 years in Canada, who is right now inside of Canada in the year 2024, almost 2025 now, and is unable to get through a sentence without the internet time off. That's why there's no real potential for investment in Canada. But here we go again. So we heard jabs, go.
Okay. Well, yeah. So he bought enough jabs for every man, woman, and child 8 times over in Canada. And surely to goodness, after you've been informed by CSIS and the RCMP that, the Chinese took coronavirus from the lab in Winnipeg and then added, gain of function and weaponized it in Wuhan, and then to buy all those jabs off of the Chinese, like, that certainly is treasonous. I think the first part may be treasonous in itself, but even if he pretends that there was some sort of just naivete about that, certainly once you know that, to go ahead and buy all those things off the Chinese, knowing what they've done, if that's not treason.
Yeah, that's right. If that is not treason, then what is treason at that point? And Rob, it is possible for a country's leader to say, hey, they just got duped. We just got lied to by the Communist Chinese Party. And as a result of being lied to by that party, we're going to stop everything that we're doing right now. He could have come out and said, don't take those needles. He could have said that. He didn't. He could have stopped all the production of it. He could have stopped all the purchasing of it. He could have stopped the shipments. He could have sent one of Canada's 3 naval vessels out to sink the ships bringing the garbage into the country. He didn't. So it doesn't matter that he was lied to. He knew the truth within probably a couple of days and didn't do anything about it. And in all that time, shut down the entire Canadian economy, which has not recovered and is not going to recover, not for at least 100 years. It's going to take 10 decades of strong leadership to get the country back to where it is. And I don't know, do we have strong leadership in Canada? And I think the answer on that one's a resounding no. I don't think that we do at all. And we've got Rob is trying to come back in here. I do, again, apologize for Central Canada's incapacity to deliver solid internet to people. Rob's back, everybody. So it's a treasonous act. I agree. Rob, I just built on what you were saying there. Trudeau did nothing. After he found out he was duped, he didn't stop it. So it is treason. So please keep building on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, once you've done that, and I understand that he was also, personally involved in the sense that he stood to make money off of it. He was personally invested in making money off of that. So, I mean, there's all sorts of motive there. There's mens rea, there's actus reus, there's all this type of stuff. I think there's plenty, of information there to go after him with regard to charging him for treason. And that's why sometimes I wear a hoodie that says arrest Trudeau. And I think that I hope there are some RCMP officers, if not some of the senior command, the more political of the types, certainly the junior ones who come out of the depot and come out of training in Regina here, that have ideals and are young and full of kind of idealism with regard to their task, their role, etc., whatever, that maybe there'll be enough to go after them.
Okay, here. Because a lot of the cops that they're hiring in Canada right now, Rob, are really not that intelligent, I'm going to say something that even the dumbest of cops is going to understand. Hey, coppers, whichever one of you is brave enough to go and arrest Trudeau, it doesn't matter if he gets convicted or not. You'll be heralded as a hero. You could write books about it. You will be an instant millionaire. People will throw money at you worldwide. Okay, stupids, go do it. Go get rich. Go be famous. You'll like it. Okay, Rob, please continue.
Well, on that note, I mean, let's say that you had an RCMP officer with the gumption to do that. Even if the RCMP decided that they didn't like that, or the government decided to let you go or not sign your check or whatever, I'm sure that a political party would be willing to let you run as a candidate in the upcoming election. And the Liberals, as you know, the poll numbers, they're not going to do very well. You could probably even run in Toronto and win a seat against the incumbent Liberal. So, yeah, I think there's room to move there.
All right. So one more time. Sometimes, Rob, I've met a lot of really dumb people that work for government, various branches of it. Sometimes I feel like I've got to talk like a seal. Money, money. Sometimes I just feel that is how bad our society has become. So any cop wants to be rich, arrest Trudeau. You know what? Come down to Panama. There's a lot of very wealthy individuals here, wealthy Canadians and Americans. I'm willing to bet somebody would buy you a house right off the hop just as soon as you get off the plane. Oh, man. Right. So, Rob, tonight we're talking about gold, silver, oil, and bankruptcy. Oh, my. And I think what I want to get at here is the potential bankruptcy of municipalities, possibly provinces, possibly the nation. I'd like to talk about that as a real thing. Could you elaborate on that with your political experience, please?
Sure. Well, when I first got elected in 1997, I wondered if in my tenure as a member of parliament in my lifetime, whether or not Canada would actually cross into the $1 trillion territory for debt. And of course, Mr. Trudeau has literally doubled the debt in his time. His father did a terrible job with that when he was in before, in the 70s and the early 80s. But now we're staring at trillions of dollars of debt. And that's just federal debt. That's not taking into account provincial debts, municipal debts, etc. If you look at where we were in Western democracies after the end of, say, for example, the First World War, the Second World War, it was not good. But I think our situation right now, despite the fact that we have not fought and won a world war, we are now at like 130% of gross domestic product in terms of our debt. So the ability to pay it back is very difficult. Now, if you do what Milei is doing in Argentina, and you say, oh, okay, well, we're going to drastically cut back, some of the largesse, the fat, the lard, whatever in government, and streamline things and what have you, then there's a way out of it, But as you can tell, the Liberals in Canada and Justin Trudeau are certainly not interested in that. They're, as a matter of fact, they love program spending and creating greater entitlements and what have you. So we're going the opposite way to dig ourselves out from that type of situation. So, yeah, we're in a bad way. We have no gold reserves. Like Switzerland, tiny little Switzerland, has over 1,000 tons of gold. And you think Canada has effectively nothing. That is a sad, sad commentary on our situation. So, I don't think you can carry on the way we are without having real consequences. I think as well, at some stage, we could see a run on banks. I think that's not impossible. I no longer bank with the chartered banks. I go with a provincially regulated financial institution, which actually has gold and makes that a selling point, if you will. And I think we need to get more and more of that going, because I don't trust the federal government. I don't trust Trudeau. The Bank of Canada spent a lot of money to research into central bank digital currency. I don't think they spend a ton of money on that for no reason. I think the reason why some of these elites, these globalists, like the idea of central bank digital currency is, one, China loves it because they're able to tack their currency with other central banks and therefore prevent their people from leeching the money out of the system, a corrupt system in China. But as well, I think a lot of these people realize that they've bankrupted some of these countries. Like, Canada's, here's the thing to think about. California is thought of as a basket case with regard to the other states in the United States in terms of its indebtedness. Canada is worse than California, right? And California, so it's part of the United States, has 8,000 tons of gold in the U.S. Treasury. Canada has none. So, if we get into trouble, the currency, those polymer notes you talk about, they are not in good shape. The only thing we have going for us is that we do about 2/3, 60% of our trade with the United States. That's it. Otherwise, we have nothing that anybody would give us credence to back our currency with. So it's a terrible situation. And I'm grateful that the Bank Act has been kicked ahead. The can's been kicked down the road about a year, where before it was going to expire on June 30th of next year, 2025.
Yeah. Actually, Rob, I just want to reflect on that for a quick second there. It's the Bank Act is 99 years old, and they were going to let it expire in June of next year. I figured that Trudeau would let that happen to create chaos to be able to cancel the election. But it turns out that because every police department in Canada watches this show, and you came on 5 times to talk about this, guess what happened? They extended it 2 years. So congratulations to you and to the show and all of you out there who spread the show around. We got the attention of the federal government. So you got 2 more years, Canadians, to get your money out. But what are you waiting for? Get your money out. Right?
Yeah. So the way I look at this is, when I talk about gold and silver and copper and oil, that's real money. And it's not because I want people to get out, of a solvent currency. It's because I realize the currency isn't solvent. That's the problem. Like, I would love if Canada had the free banking system we had a century ago, where, the banks held gold, held silver, our currency was respected and used and credible in the Caribbean and in the United Kingdom, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that was the legacy Canada had a century ago. But we're a long way from that, folks. And those vaults that held that gold are now empty. They're in the basement of the East Block of the House of Commons. And they've been empty for quite some time, as are the mints, effectively, other than printing the odd coin here and there. But, that's it. So, I want us desperately to move back to a solvent system, but it's not. And sadly, you've got these major chartered banks that are regulated by the federal government. And Mr. Trudeau is, set, I think, on... Like, people sometimes look at Trudeau and they say, well, maybe he's just naive and he doesn't understand economics because he says that a budget will balance itself, right? Okay, yeah, that's one perspective. Or you look at what he's doing and you say, well, maybe what he's actually trying to do is crash the economy, is default the government, is to create a currency crisis, is to cause inflation and make people go hungry. And then when you look at that, if you say, well, if he's actually listening to, the globalists and the World Economic Forum and the Klaus Schwabs and whatever of the world, and he's their darling and whatever, well, then he's doing exactly what he should. Like, he is literally destroying the Canadian economy, the dollar, bringing on inflation, printing money. Like, he's kind of doing exactly what he should if your intentions are nefarious. And so sometimes, you shouldn't look at him just as somebody who, is a trust fund kid, drama teacher, a body surfer who just happens to get in there because, he's got his mom's looks and his dad's last name or something like that. But say, oh, no, he might be actually part of something far more nefarious and evil. And he's kind of doing exactly what he should to kind of destroy the country.
Well, I do believe that he is trying to destroy the country. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. And I guess we could say Trudeau's doing a great job of what he was hired to do, and that is to destroy Canada. So I guess congratulations, Canada, especially all you ladies out there who elected him because he's good looking. I mean, how many women did you hear say, I voted for him because he's got really good hair? Okay. Well, thank you for that.
It's painful, but I saw it and I know it. I also want to say, I want to thank those 40 Liberal MPs, a minority, a quarter of the caucus, surely, that are asking for him to step down. I also want to thank Stephen Ledrew, who's the former president of the Liberal Party of Canada, who's openly called for his removal and questioned his governance many times on his shows. And people like Dan McTeague, who's a former colleague in the House of Commons, talking about gas and taxes and all these types of things. And these people have put a lot on the line. I know what the loyalty is like inside the Liberal Party, and they expect to get some sort of quid pro quo and reward if they're good loyal Liberals. But these people have really stuck their necks out there to ask for his removal, and I'm grateful for them for doing so, and I hope they succeed.
Yeah, most certainly. And we've got some really, really awesome ladies watching the show right now who are saying that Trudeau is not good looking and they don't like him very much. Good. Thank you, ladies, for that. Mwah. Appreciate it. Right. So, all right, getting back to Canada's currency being as useless as this Costa Rican 2,000 2,000 cologne. No, it's made of polymer, but it's not backed by a damn thing. Before you get further into it, though, I did want to build on one thing that you said, and that is the Canadian dollar is not respected anywhere in the world anymore. Period. Countries don't want it. In Costa Rica, I only found one bank, and I had to fly from Jovita to San Jose to find one bank that would take my Canadian money and exchange it. And the exchange rate was done at 40 points because they just don't want it. They really don't. In the casinos down here in all over Panama City, and there are many, you can walk in there with Euro and US and play any machine that you want. But I tried to say, hey, I've got some Canadian dough here. Can you change it? No. Like it's Canada. No, Canada. No. There are 52 banks that I know of so far. Plus, there's the smaller trust companies in this country, and none of them want to do business with Canadian banks, because they know what a headache it is to even waste their time trying to do business with any of the Canadian banking institutions. And Canada just sucks. And it's amazing how Canadians don't know that it sucks, but the rest of the world does. So now that you know that little bit here about Latin America not wanting Canadian money, and I think we all know that no other country does, what do Canadians do to protect what they have left? Go ahead.
Well, okay, so let's talk about bail-in versus bail-out just for a second. So let's say, for example, somebody has $100,000 in, I'm going to pick, just some chartered bank in Canada, and you're getting, let's say, 5-point-something% return on investment from that. Watch out. Because the way this is now set up is it's no longer a bailout. What I mean by that is that historically, if the bank had trouble, okay, if there was a run on the banks, then what would happen is the government would step in, as the British used to say in their system, going back, the lender of last resort, to make sure that the bank didn't fail, etc. This happened, Canada and the US both embarked along that when there was a bit of a banking crisis at the very end of the 1800s. And it was JP Morgan that personally stepped in to provide the liquidity and equity and backed up the U.S. banking system so that it didn't collapse. So at that point, there were a bunch of, kind of quasi-lefty progressives who said, oh, well, we don't want to be dependent upon one man. So they said we have to create the Federal Reserve and we have to have a mechanism to come in to make sure this doesn't happen again. And Canada followed suit. So, but that was based on the idea that all of us collectively, or the government or the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada, would step in to make sure there wasn't a run on banks and provided the stability, if you will, so that a given bank wouldn't fail and cause a run on all the banks.
Right.
Since then is we've actually got a scenario where it's now called a bail-in, which means that if you have money, $100,000, $200,000, $300, whatever it is, in the banks, and it doesn't have to be 100,000, it can be a lot less. The banks will take that to basically back themselves up so that they do not collapse. So they will take your private holdings and they will use that to make sure that they do not fail. That's called a bail-in, where they take money from their depositors to make sure that they don't fail. So it's not a government security anymore.
Aha. Oh, we lost him again. All right. So this has happened. The bail-in that Rob is referring to, it has happened a number of times in other countries around the world where they've decided that they're just going to take your money. Yeah. So the concept of a bail-in, honestly speaking, I don't even think it's illegal in Canada. It should be, but I don't think that it is. We're seeing that the Canadian banks are breaking every law imaginable. Let's go back to the Ottawa truckers convoy when Trudeau wasn't brave enough to come out and face Canadians saying, okay, have a spokesman come and sit with me and have a conversation. Instead, he instructed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to get on horseback and trample Canadians. He instructed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to go steal fuel directly out of the gas tanks of truckers who were there, and ordered the banks to shut down people's bank accounts. So if that's not illegal, I don't think the bail-ins are going to be either. We got Rob who's going to be popping back in here in just a second. So I'm very, very sad to say that in Canada, if you're in one of the federally chartered banks, that's Bank of Montreal, Toronto Dominion Bank, HSBC, Scotia, or Royal, and right now, National Bank of Canada is also very close to becoming one of the bigger banks out there. Got to get your money out. Yeah, move your money out. Even if it goes to the States temporarily or down here in Panama, you got to get your money out of these institutions. Rob, please continue. Bail-ins we're talking about.
Yeah. So what happens is if you've got deposits in Canadian, chartered financial institutions, then what happens now is the bail-in, where your money, your private money, is used to back the bank, and it's not going to be government money that comes to the rescue. It's your money, and that means that you could go down with the bank. You could lose all of your deposit. So I recommend to people that. If you can find a provincially regulated financial institution that'll offer you a comparable return on investment, if you can go into, say, for example, if you don't want to do just gold and silver or copper because you want to be earning something rather than just have a store of wealth per se, then I would say invest in a copper mine, a gold mining company. That type of thing, and I think oil actually is going to be interesting. If there's an oil producing company, for example, I think that has greater potential, because those are all real, and we could run into a scenario very realistically where there's a run on banks, and if that's the case, your deposits will be gone, and I don't think people realize just how devastating that'll be.
It's going to be incredibly devastating. But the biggest issue I think that we all face here, Rob, is that Canadians just don't understand it, and there seems to be no way for Canadians to learn how the banking system actually works in the country. And we do know that our good friends in the United States are having very similar issues, where Bank of America right now is actually talking about the possibility of shutting down about half of its banks. That's not a good scene. As soon as that announcement got made, what happened? Chase Bank, boom, through the roof. Relay is one that's very similar to Tangerine, where it's not a brick and mortar bank, and they went boom, through the roof. So in the United States, it's good for them because they have competition. But in Canada, it's not good for Canadians at all because there's only 5 true national federal banks. National Bank is number 6, but they're like barely in there. And then when you explain to a Canadian that you should be in a provincially chartered bank or a smaller mom and pop bank, they'd have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's it.
no,
They just don't know because it's not got the logo of the 6 they recognize. And today, just one more thought here, and then I'm going to let you take this. It was suggested to me by my American lawyer in Montana, of all places, that it's a good idea for Canadians and Americans in Democrat states to just open up title insurance companies and earn between 7 and 12% on that. It's crazy. When was the last time you heard someone actually took advantage of title insurance? Like, you'd never have to pay anybody out. So seemingly these little banks and these little ideas out there are something that Canadians and Americans should really get into because the big boys suck. Your thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you have charter banks in Canada that are only offering you 5%, give or take, return on investment type of thing, for just, for safeguarding your own money and everything else, you should be looking at something that, if it offers you a better return on investment and you don't have to worry about a bail-in where they take your deposit and absorb it into themselves to save themselves in terms of a run on banks, I think you're way better off. And I know that it's uncomfortable for people to think about that, but we have to seriously consider these things. I'm just going to tell some stories here because I want people to understand. Our banks were heavily compromised during the subprime crisis. The reason why our banks didn't go under, some of them, was because of the relationship between Mark Carney and Stephen Harper. And what happened there was that the Bank of Canada bought some of that bad debt off of the Canadian banks. And then later, when the markets recovered, sold it back at a bit of a profit. But if that stuff had stayed on the balance sheets for those banks could have gone under. So we could have had a very similar situation to what happened in the United States when they lost Lehman Brothers, for example, in 2007, 2008. And the reason it didn't happen was because we had a prime minister who understood macroeconomics and a guy as the governor of the Bank of Canada who looked to make that happen. But we had banks, and I can name individual banks. I won't on the program because they might get all sensitive about that. But there's one major bank that we have in this country that was just recently fined $3 billion.
Oh, hold on. No, wait, Rob, I'm going to remove you. Hold on. Just a second. That was TD Bank, everybody. That was Toronto Dominion Bank got nailed $3 billion for securities inaccuracies and whatnot in the United States. Yeehaw. Okay, Rob, you didn't have to say it. I did.
So we have banks that are, in some difficulties and would have gone down when Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac and AIG and Lehman Brothers or whatever had their difficulties in 2007, 2008. But we basically protected them by taking some of the worst debt off of their balance sheets and then selling it back to them later on, type of thing. But we have banks that are heavily compromised, and if you have a situation where we're now dealing with a multi-trillion-dollar debt in Canada, no gold reserve whatsoever to back the currency, we're not in a good spot, and I don't think everybody understands just how trepidatious that is.
Okay, so I have to explain that one now for our friends in the United States. So for Americans, Canada's population is about 41 million, and currently about 11 million of the entire nation they're not working, or they are third world, bring-ins by the federal government, and they don't want to work. They never will work. So how could a country like Canada, even though the land mass is huge and spans almost 6.5 time zones, but there's no jobs, and a quarter of the entire population is not working. So $1.5 trillion of debt is massive. It's crippling. It's never going to get paid back, and it can and most likely will lead to the complete bankruptcy of the entire country. So factor in that California's population is 33 million. California almost has Canada's population within it. So factor that in, everybody. I still say if you've got your money in Canada, you're crazy. It might be time to move it out, especially to something like wise.com, WISE.com, or square.com. Those are highly respected international private banks who also have credit cards you can spend anywhere. You all know how much I talk about Panama City here, Rob. I take my Wise credit card, or debit card as they call it, and I go beep, and for 35 cents, I get on the subway system here in Panama City, which is more modern than everything in Canada combined. All right. So these international cards, these international banks are actually a better place to store your money. But Rob, I want to get your thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let me talk about South Africa just for a second, because I want to draw a comparison here. I knew people who moved from South Africa in the 1970s. Now, when you left South Africa in the 1970s, you could still sell your house. You could take out your money. You could convert it. You could move your funds to other countries, etc. But then, once it got to the late 80s, that was not the case. So the government no longer allowed you to move your South African rand and convert it into Canadian dollars or American dollars and transport it out of the country, not legally anyhow. And so then people started to look at ways that they could, say use Krugerrands or diamonds or, whatever. I mean, it got so bad that people were just starting to hoard appliances like fridges and stoves and microwaves and whatever, because that was a store of value that if people wanted to get another fridge or a microwave, they'd come to you, and that was better than having, rand as a currency, et cetera, whatever, other than the Krugerrands, the gold coins. So I'm just telling people, I'm warning people in terms of what our indebtedness is, the status of some of the banks that we have, the regulations. We were going to literally have the Bank of Canada Act expire next year, June 30th, 2025. It's now been kicked. The can has been kicked ahead a little bit, but Yeah, I know. Yeah, because we're warning people. I get that. And, it's disturbing because, if you talk to branch managers, nice people, they determine whether or not you get a loan and whether or not you get a credit card and can establish an account at a bank. That's great. But they don't monitor the Bank Act. They're not the people who do, government relations for the bank in Ottawa or Toronto. And so they don't know that stuff. They're good people. They've certainly done more financial, courses than I have, type of thing. But they don't know the politics. And so it's basically the people in the head branches in Toronto or in Ottawa that are going to be the ones that follow this stuff. And frankly, I know some of those people who work for the Canadian Bankers Association, et cetera. That doesn't mean that they necessarily read through the nitty gritty either. I know how it works. And so I'm grateful that that can's been kicked down the road a little bit. But once again, people, I'm warning everybody that, it's not as solid a system as you think. When you take into account the debts and everything else, I think getting rid of Mr. Trudeau would be a tremendous boon. I think if you got in Mark Carney, who's just as much of a globalist, a World Economic Forum guy, and frankly, probably more clever at selling central bank digital currency. They've spent a lot of money on researching this stuff. I don't think we're any better off. We're probably worse off that way. So I'm just warning people that, there are ways that you can, like when I talk about gold and silver and copper, that's a way to preserve your money. There's nothing backing the currency, folks. There really isn't. Our fiat currency has nothing backing it. There's no fractional reserve. There's no reserves, gold, silver, whatever. So if there's a run, that stuff is just paper. It's literally worth toilet paper, folks. And so at least if you have gold or silver or copper or something like that, that has real value. And even if that paper becomes worthless and becomes toilet paper, at least that other stuff has value. Now, Warren Buffett would say if you actually own gold stocks, silver stocks, copper mining stocks, and it's producing, a little bit more gold and silver and copper every year type of thing, then you might be better off. But I think there is something to be said about holding that stuff, because there's a lot of people who have certificates. And, having a certificate is not the same as holding it in your possession. Because let's say, for example, I had a bunch, let's use the example of the charter banks again. So let's say, for example, I had a bunch of gold or silver, and I had it in a safety deposit box at, say, for example, one of the chartered banks. Well, if the chartered bank goes under, what happens is, A, they're going to restrict the amount of currency that I'm able to take out, right? How much I'm allowed today. I'm allowed $100 for the day or something. Okay. And they're not going to allow me to take my stuff out of the safety deposit boxes. It's all locked down. All you have to do is look at what happens in places like Argentina when there's a run on the banks. You can't take the stuff out. The bank shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
If people want to safeguard themselves,
Rob, and everybody watching, if you've got a safety deposit box in a bank in Canada, what are you thinking, man? Get everything out of it now. Canadian banks will do whatever they are told by the Liberal Party or whoever's in charge of the government, and whatever the Canada Revenue Agency tells them to do. Even in some cases, there have been wordings now of municipal fines where an bylaw officer from a municipality in Canada goes into a bank with not even a court order, just a demand for money, and the banks are giving money to the cities now. So your money is just not safe, everybody. Anyone who says, oh, I work for the government, can just take your money. You figure the banks make a phone call to you saying, hey, I've got this loser wearing a costume that says Toronto on it, and he wants your money. You should be able to have that right to fly down to the branch and find out what's going on. But you don't have that right, Rob. Also, I just wanted to let everybody know, you see top middle, right above, hold on there. Boom. Directly above me, right here. Instagram has shut down yet another account, my lord. So the official Kevin J. Johnston Instagram account is gone. Could everybody please head over to Instagram right now and follow me on my new one, Kevin J. Johnston X, and my new Twitter account, or X account, also Kevin J. Johnston X. Just my name, Kevin J. Johnston X. Everybody head over there. Follow me on both of those, please, so that you never miss a beat on the information that we're going to bring out. Let's get that done. And don't forget, for my American friends and my Canadian friends here, if you have a corporation that has IRS debt or Canada Revenue Agency debt and you're drowning in it, I will buy your corporation from you and take all of your liabilities. Every single debt, every penny of it comes over to me, where you will never have to worry about these debts again. Head over to my website, kevinjjohnston.me. That's my name, kevinjjohnston.me. Hit me on the contact form and let's get your debt done. Give it to me. Go back to living your life your way. So, Rob, buying debt has been actually very exciting in Canada and the United States. There's a lot of small business people that during that nonsense, that COVID nonsense, lost their businesses, or they lost their entire client base. So they just don't have any money left. Their companies are not making money. So I've been buying companies left, right, and center that have monumental amounts of debt. And it's amazing. We've given the lives back to over 100 people now who had corporations. I love it. Really good feeling to see people get their lives back. So let me ask you this question now. With the fact that Trudeau's government gave away or sold all of Canada's gold, given the fact that our silver reserves and copper reserves in Canada really would never be able to replace our currency, given that Trudeau has gone out of his way to shut down our lumber, our oil, our diamond mines, our fresh water exports, our everything, given the fact that we've gone $1.5 trillion into debt in Canada with no new highways, no new airports, no new shipping ports, no new bridges worth talking about, no new tunnels under the lakes or oceans. What exactly do you think that Canadians should do? Stick it out and see what happens, or get out? Let me hear it. Oh, and he froze. Oh,
Well, I'll be
oh.
honest. There's not a week. There's not a week.
Okay, you're back. You're back. Go, go, go,
Hopefully,
go.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go.
Okay. There's not a week that goes by that I don't think about buying property somewhere else. There's not a week. Not a week that goes by where I don't think about that. But
Mm.
that being said, yeah, I really hope that there's a movement inside the Liberal Party to get rid of Trudeau. I really hope that that picks up steam, because like even Dan McTeague, you don't have to take it from me as a conservative. I'm a partisan, activist, etc. Obviously campaigning, but Dan McTeague was a Liberal MP for a long time, and he recognizes that Trudeau's kind of pie in the sky, uh, you know climate change, alarmism, Agenda 2030 stuff doesn't work. He knows that. He's a practical guy. He tracks the prices of gasoline and the competition and what the carbon tax is doing. He realizes the carbon tax is destructive. It's destroying your standard of living. It's costing jobs. It's a boondoggle. It's not actually affecting anything with regard to climate change.
Mhm.
So just, if you don't take it from me as a conservative, take it from Dan McTeague as a Liberal who says this guy doesn't know what he's doing and he's got to go. And I hope that more and more of the Liberal MPs recognize that.
Well, here's hoping, but at the same time, in Canada, or I guess in every country out there, your loyalty is supposed to be to the party that you're in, which is essentially why nothing gets done. Trudeau probably should have been out about 15 minutes after he took office, but the Liberals propped him up, and then he in turn propped them up by making sure that his cabinet was 50% women, just because it didn't work. But that's what we have to put up with here. Is it's all just far left-wing ideology and nothing to do with building the country, and everything in the world to do with tearing it apart. So you mentioned bank runs 4 times so far. Could you explain to the public what a bank run is? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, let's say, for example, you had that happen with those Silicon Valley banks. In the U.S. and California particularly. But if you have a situation where a bank gets into trouble, and it's publicly acknowledged that it's getting into trouble, you'll see people start to sell off its stock. You'll see a situation where people who are depositors go in to grab their deposits out of the bank. And all banks operate on the idea that deposits go in, and then based on that, they can loan out more. Because they have a certain amount that they hold on to as insurance, if you will, not insurance, but they have to have a critical mass in case people come in to take deposits out, etc. But it's only a small fraction of the money that they loan. And so if all the people who had deposits in the banks came in at once, or not even at once, just even probably 20% of them, not even that, came in to ask for their deposits back, the banks wouldn't have the money to give it back. And so when you have a bank that gets in trouble, and then all of a sudden there's a run on a bank, and that can mean just not a run on one bank, but it can cause enough worry, angst, anxiety that people will not only cause a run on that bank, but other banks, like what happened, say, for example, in the Great Depression in 1929. Then a lot of those institutions go belly up. And I'm just telling folks, like we've got some banks that are over leveraged. They were over leveraged at the time when Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, and Lehman Brothers and AIG went down in the 2007, 2008 crisis. The only reason they didn't have the problems that the U.S. had with that is because we had Mark Carney, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the Bank of Canada, take on some of that bad debt off their balance sheets. That was the only reason it didn't happen. So a lot of people don't know that, and so we have banks that are in a bad way, and you alluded earlier. I mean, we have some banks that are facing some fairly hefty fines for their activities with regard to some of the accounts they set up and what they were doing in kind of a money laundering operation, if you will. and I get it. They do that for profitability. They want to pad the bottom line, all that stuff. But folks, your banking system isn't as solid as it should be. And I like to tell people and educate people about the way it used to be with gold and silver and fractional reserves and the way that our free banking system used to work from 1817 to 1914. But we're a long way from that. And, we could see some serious trouble. And so I advise people that a provincially regulated financial institution, I bank with those in Alberta. Certainly you can do that in Saskatchewan, Ontario, etc. BC hopefully will have a change of government here this week with a conservative government with John Rustad. And then I think you're back into a scenario where you've got a better scenario with a BC provincially regulated financial institution than a federally regulated one. Yeah, people have to pay attention to this stuff.
Well, they certainly do. Now, so a bank run here, essentially, what you're referring to is it was Black Friday of 1929 when the stock market crashed and everyone ran to the banks to pull their money out, and the banks crashed because they just didn't have enough cash in there. Why? Because they were lending out 10 times the actual cash that they really had in there. So, Rob, can you hear me? By the way, look, you froze again. Oh, man. I got the best question going for Rob. He's our banking expert in Canada here. Wow. Well, the question I'm going to ask Rob when he comes back in here, and this is me just kind of frothing at the mouth here, but the Canadian banking system is not what you call a capital-based one. In the United States, you can go in with a really good business plan. Rob, I just talked about the United States and Canadian banking here. The United States, it's capital-based, so you can go in with a good business plan, a little bit of collateral, get a bank loan so you can open a business and make some money and pay the bank back. That's kind of like on future promises. Whereas in Canada, banking's all done. It's all asset-based. Good luck getting a loan unless you already have money. So if you want $1 million in Canada, you got to have $1 million in the bank already, or a $1 million home that they will definitely want to take from you. You just want to slap these people when they say, "Oh, okay, what house do you own?" Right? I was trying to leverage contracts that I had that were worth multi-million dollars, and the banks wouldn't even look at it because they're too stupid to comprehend it. Now, I always thought my own fantasy here would be, should we, Rob, I hope you can hear me, should we be convincing Canadians to do bank runs? Go to every single federal bank in Canada and just pull all your money out now, whether it be in cash or transferring it into wise.com or square.com or PayPal or Stripe. Go ahead. Oh, no. Rob, can you hear that question? Oh, I don't think he's hearing anything I'm saying. Oh, my God. That's you're getting a taste, America, of what Canadian internet is. I'm here in Panama, not Panama City, Florida, but Panama City, Panama. Look how good my internet is. And Rob is in central Canada, and look how horrible his internet is. Through no fault of his own, I might add, everybody. That's probably StaskTel or any of that junk that's out in that province. So he's back. He's popping back in here. I got to get Rob's opinion on this one. Because my own personal fantasy is that I want to see every Canadian go and just pull their money from Canadian banks and watch them crash. And why is that? Well, I would state that the banks deserve it in Canada. I mean, they're making billions of dollars every year. Like the Canada Revenue Agency is making over $280 billion a year on just personal income tax, never mind goods and services tax, carbon taxes, fuel taxes, and corporate income tax and payroll tax, the whole bit. It's insane how much money is actually being made by banking institutions and the Canadian government. And it's bizarre also when you think about how small the Canadian population really is. I don't know if Rob's coming in yet here. I don't think so. So I would very much like to see Canadians just say enough and go and avenge yourselves upon this horrible banking system that has repressed not only you, but the entire Canadian people for the last 40 years. Because I can tell you, I'm 53 now. I have positively no recollection whatsoever of it being easy or even medium difficult to get a bank loan in Canada. It was always jumping through hoops. And rarely after the year 2000 did the banking manager or bank officer that I was speaking to ever even speak English. English was in some cases second or third languages for these people, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. When I would make cultural references, they wouldn't get it. When I was utilizing nuance of language, they wouldn't get it. The only thing that they would understand is what the screen would tell them to ask and tell them to say. So Canada has never really been, in the last 40 to 50 years, a capital-based lending structure. And that is awful, because at that point, a Canadian living in Canada can't get a loan to open a business in Canada and then later on employ Canadians. The whole idea of lending money in federally chartered banks is to get the economy going, is to get people to take risks and to open up businesses that will then employ people and earn tax revenue off the business and tax revenue off the employees. And the bank would then make their 2, 5, 8, 12% interest on that deal. Everybody's supposed to win when an economy is being run well by good leadership and a banking system that is conducive to making loans based on capital and not based on assets. So I told the story before where I had a $1.4 million radio advertising contract in Canada, and I went to every single bank I possibly could, and not once did I speak to a Canadian-born individual trying to say, I want a bank loan. Here's a $1.4 million contract. No, I'm looking for is $500,000. Well, I don't know. I don't think we do contracts. You have to have a house. Okay. What do? Well, I made the decision to go to the United States, and I sold that radio. I didn't sell, sorry. I used that radio contract as collateral and got a loan there instead, because in America, the business of America is business. How do you get business flowing in America? You got to make sure you have a capital-based society with banks that loan capital, right? What's the point of having a capitalist society if you can't get capital? So that is why I hate Canada as much as I do as a Canadian citizen, and why I've left 11 months ago, and I'm probably not going back, is because it's all contradictory in that you need capital to bring in capital, but you can't get capital in the first place. So Rob, the question I was asking earlier is, should we be convincing Canadians to do bank runs in Canada, grab every single penny out of your accounts you possibly can, and force those banks into closure to maybe have them crash and rebuild a better system? Your thoughts, please.
Well, I'm grateful for the Canadians that pulled their money out of the accounts when the 200 accounts of those who supported the truckers were frozen, because what that did is it made the banks realize that if they're complicit with the government by seizing people's bank accounts like they did for those who supported the truckers, that there would be consequences and it crashed the system. I know bankers who were running around their branches literally counting how much cash they had because they were worried about people and what their deposits were being pulled out. So that made the banks realize that they shouldn't be lockstep with the government with regard to crushing those who supported the truckers, etc. And I think made them realize that, the government's not necessarily their best friend with regard to this stuff. So there was, billions of dollars was literally pulled out of the system. And it made the bank pick up to think, oh, we should be doing the stupid stuff the government's asking us to do because.
Oh, no. You see, if we had more capital in Canada, there would be better internet in central Canada. We wouldn't be having this problem. If we could get capital, we could have a new internet company come in to the country and stop this issue from happening. For our American friends, Rob right now is right in the middle of the province of Saskatchewan, which is the farming province of the country. And the internet and the telephone lines out there were subsidized by the federal government to encourage people to live there. But on a piece of land that's about twice the size of Texas, there's fewer than 500,000 people living there now. So they're just not updating the phone lines. There's no infrastructure being built there. So when you have a lack of capital, everybody, that's what happens. Now, what Rob was talking about there was the truckers' convoy in Ottawa, when it was Justin Trudeau that told the banks to start shutting down people's bank accounts who were protesting in the capital city of Canada. So the bank managers naturally were going to be making sure that there was enough cash inside their safes to be able to accommodate Canadians who were smart to go and get their money. But a bank run doesn't just have to be cash, everybody. You literally can just simply start transferring your funds into wise.com. Get your wise.com account, free to do. Get your wise.com Visa debit card, free to do. Get a Relay account in the United States. Get a square.com or a Stripe account. Start moving your money into those institutions. So that's the same idea. Rob, I just built upon what you were saying there to do with the truckers' convoy and the banks making sure there was enough cash. Did the banks actually end up getting into some type of financial trouble after Trudeau made that announcement? Go ahead.
Yes, they did. What wound up happening was, I think they froze the accounts of 200 people who had donated to the truckers. But as a result of that, people being scared about what was being done, there was about several $billion that was pulled out of the Canadian banking system, because people said, well, if they're going to do that to the people who support the truckers, maybe I'm next. And what that did is it made the banks realize, well, if we're going to be complicit with the government in some of its idiocy, that could literally collapse our banks and cause a run on the banks. So at that stage, they basically told the government, stop, because you could actually crash the credit system in Canada if you do that. So I'm grateful for Canadians to do that and make sure the banks realize that they can't just do whatever the federal government wants to do on some of this stuff. They have to have, some level of independence, with regard to that, and not just do everything that Trudeau wants them to do. So that was good, and I think also it's a great education for people to say, well, maybe we should be considering provincially regulated financial institutions, not just the federally chartered ones, because their Trudeau does not have, and the CRA, et cetera, whatever, do not have the reach that they do with the charter banks. So I do encourage people, I implore people, if you can get a comparable rate of return for your deposits in provincially regulated financial institutions, don't give Trudeau, the CRA, that type of power over your finances.
Well, I agree with that. And that's also why I've been helping so many Canadians get their money moved here to Panama. But the Panamanian banks won't do business with Canadian banks, and Canadian banks will only now send money to the United States. So you have to do this rigmarole of converting your Canadian money into American money with a company like Knightsbridge, then transfer from Canada to the United States, and then from the United States finally here to Panama. But everyone who does this, they say it's absolutely worth it. They're paying nominal fees to get that to happen. And owning a corporation here in Panama with a corporate bank account, it's completely protected from the Canadian government and completely protected even from the federal government of Panama. Even though the Panamanian government here, I love their banking system here. There's 52 big banks here. The government charters you, but then the government has no right to come in and say what you can and cannot do. Unless you are egregiously breaking the law, the government doesn't come in there and say, Juan Valdez didn't pay his coffee taxes, so take the money. The banks will not cooperate. So everyone who's curious about that, I know a lot of you say, well, Panama has a deal with Canada. Where are you getting that crap from? Panama will extradite a murderer from Panama to Canada. But I assure you, Panama is not going to do what the Canada Revenue Agency says, and Panama is not going to do what some judge in some provincial court says either. If you're going to lose your money in a Panamanian bank or a Costa Rican bank, you actually have to lose a court case in those countries. Now, good luck with that. So we all need to be considering what's better for us, for we the individuals. Rob, my opinion, you can offer yours on this. My opinion is Canada as a country is done. the time for flag waving and protesting, it's past. It's not going to help anything. I'm suggesting to the men out there, work out, jog, get your stamina up, strengthen your body, learn how to fight with knives, learn how to shoot, learn survival tactics, and be ready on a moment's notice to get the hell out of Canada. Build you up and build your family up. Forget the country. That's my thought. And if you're going to do that, you got to move your money to countries like Argentina, like Panama, who actually want to do business. Now, I want to get your thoughts as a former member of parliament of 18 years, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm not optimistic about the future of the country with Trudeau at the helm. I'll tell you that. I am very much in favor of, whether it's Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, etc., exercising more autonomy. I want us to have all the powers that Quebec has, and I want us to have control over environmental policies. So if we want to put a pipeline down in Montana, we can do it without Trudeau and Guilbeault and these guys messing it up. I want to have gun rights belong to the provinces. Just like when you license a vehicle, that's considered private property. That's the purview of the province in the British North America Act, now the Canadian Constitution Act. And that was the case if there were any gun licenses issued around the time of the First World War for handguns, for example, in Ontario. That was done by the government of Ontario, not by the government in Ottawa. So we need to have premiers with the spine to stand up against Ottawa and say, no, you're not going to step in with these egregious gun regulations. It's not your place. It's ultra virus, the Constitution Act. I want us to see the provinces elect their judges. I don't trust Trudeau in the Prime Minister's office to appoint the judges anymore. I just don't trust them. They litmus test the Supreme Court to put on people that are progressive, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to see the provinces step up to do, because frankly, like in Alberta's case, we have been subsidizing socialism to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's ridiculous. We shouldn't be doing that. So these provinces need to stand up for themselves, and people, need to prepare, financially to make sure that they're not beholden to Trudeau or the CRA or whatever, and, get some of their money out of these deposits in the federally chartered banks, move it over to provincially regulated ones. I encourage people, as well, if you have property outside, and bank accounts outside type of thing, like that's not a foolish move. That's a smart move considering where things are going. Now, I hope that the Liberals who are pushing to get rid of Mr. Trudeau win the day. I hope that there's a critical mass inside their caucus that forces a leadership review and gets rid of him. But I think if we get Mark Carney, I'm not sure they're any better off. Country's not. Oh, no. I think he's just as beholden to, Davos and World Economic Forum and globalism, whatever, and probably craftier at selling central bank digital currency and China's will on that than Mr. Trudeau would be. So there's a rocky road ahead for Canada. It doesn't look good, and I want people to take the precautions necessary to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, well, do take those precautions, and especially the males out there. Not all males are real men, but you can be if you choose to be. And you do have to understand that your country of Canada, and in the United States, your Democrat regions, your Democrat counties, your Democrat cities, your Democrat states are also dead set against you and your own personal success. So you have to pick up and leave. Bankrupt anything Democrat, bankrupt everything liberal in Canada. And in my personal view, it's time to do bank runs on the big federal banks. That would be Toronto Dominion, Bank of Montreal. That would be Scotiabank, Royal Bank, and HSBC. I would even say go ahead and hit National Bank of Canada as well, because they're starting to buy up provincially chartered banks. That's not good. They're doing it. That's not a good thing. When all the provincially chartered banks and credit unions are all bought up, well, then what? Then you're completely out of choice. Because if National Bank is going to do all that, you know that one of the other five will buy National Bank and take all that. And that's the problem with acquisitions. Go ahead.
One scenario I thought about with regard to the chartered banks to get out from the thumb of the federal government potentially is if they were to set up provincially regulated branches, equivalents, and to transfer some of their assets into those. because that way it's harder for the federal government to give them dictates, mandates, etc., whatever. I think that's a potentiality. Whether or not the chartered banks take me up on that and see that as a wise way to safeguard their deposits, their customers, and their assets is another story. I mean, all I can do is tell you about what they're trying to do with the Bank Act, and obviously, like, you can see what they tried to do with the truckers and those people who supported the truckers, and that's just a taste. You know what central bank digital currency is about. All you have to do is look at China to figure that out. You can look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that's affecting whether or not banks now loan, for example, to oil companies, oil and gas companies, that type of thing. Just realize where that stuff is going. Realize where those roads will take them. And I think, frankly, if I was on the board of a federally chartered bank, I would seriously consider transferring assets to a provincially regulated entity just to be able to get out from under the thumb of Ottawa.
Yeah, something I have come across, though, is far too many people that do work in the federal banks that just want to blame everything else and not think for themselves in any way. It's always, oh, it was a head office decision. That's it. It's a head office decision. I don't want to get fired. I don't want to lose my job. That's all that we have. So unfortunately, there is no one I've come across in any banking institution that's federally run in Canada who would take any particular type of stand. And they also don't tell the truth. You know that I was a journalist for almost 7 years. And whenever I would go into any particular situation, I'm always loaded with a ton of questions. I know the answer. It's that I want the individual to answer the questions. And they always lie. And I would call them out on it all the time. And the lies just keep perpetuating. And then when they realize they've been caught, well, okay, here, they'll hand you a business card. Here's the regional manager, call them. That's all it is. It's all passing the buck. In Canada, nobody's ever held to account to anything. So Canadians have to hold the banks to account, my personal opinion, by doing bank runs. Pull all your cash out of the big five and get them into, like Rob said, provincially chartered banks in Canada instead, or get into Relay in the United States, or get into any of the Panamanian banks down here I can set you up with. So punish them. Then they might start to change their policies. And also, Rob, just so you do know, I'll get your thoughts on this one because you were in government for a long time. When the Canada Revenue Agency wants your money, they literally send a letter to your bank saying required to pay. It's a requirement to pay. But that's not a legal order. That's not a court order. They don't go to judges and get actual court orders. The requirement to pay is a request. And the bank could say no, but the banks don't. So when your money is taken from you, supposedly by the Canada Revenue Agency, those clowns right there below me, it's the actual banks that are doing it, just so you know. So, Rob, it seems that the federal banks didn't learn anything from the Ottawa Truckers Rally. Is there anything that you think that we, the people, can do aside from bank runs to smarten them up? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it is really egregious. Like I, had 2 federally chartered bank accounts shut down. I had all sorts of complications tossed into a mortgage that I had, etc., all because of stuff that the CRA did. And, all 7, criminal charges were thrown out. I'm now taking them to tax court. They don't want to produce the access to information requests that show the collusion that there was with the high up levels in Ottawa and what the CRA was doing. So they're delaying my case. It was supposed to be all finished by the end of this year, and since being pushed into next year because they don't want to release the access to information connections and everything else. So, I mean, it's sad. And I personally have lost, out of pocket $300,000-$400,000, and the opportunity cost has been in the millions. And so, I speak from experience when I tell people that you want to be careful with regard to the federally chartered banks, because they do whatever the CRA tells them to do. And even if the CRA is in the wrong, and in my case, they were very much in the wrong. And yet I've faced all sorts of repercussions from it. So I'm just warning people. And, we saw a little bit of this with the truckers, the people who supported the truckers in Ottawa. But I think under Trudeau, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And people need to protect themselves.
You absolutely have to protect yourselves because the banks do cooperate fully with every instruction given to them by the federal government of Canada or the Canada Revenue Agency. And just for our American friends, when you compare the Canada Revenue Agency to the IRS, the Canada Revenue Agency actually has zero authority. Like they have none, but everyone thinks that they do. And I have a lot of clients, Rob, who all say the same thing. Like I do my taxes and I'm so honest because I don't want to go to jail. Yeah, I don't know where this myth came from that you can do prison time for owing tax money, but you can't. What they did to you was part of a greater picture. I think it's more just the fact that they were told to mess with you by the feds because you wouldn't agree with the feds. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair, and that's why they don't want to produce the access to information requests about the orders that came from Ottawa, from the minister, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, no, I think access to information requests, when and if they finally cough those up, will corroborate that. But yeah, just to talk about the inefficiency with the CRA just for a second, Germany has one-tenth the amount of people working for their revenue agency on a per capita basis the CRA does. So we're 10 times bigger than we need to be compared to the Germans. And you say, well, maybe the Germans are just big on efficiency. How about the US? And you say, well, in the US, we have 8 times as many people working for the CRA on a per capita basis as the Internal Revenue Agency does in the United States. 8 times. We're 10 times bigger than Germany. We're 8 times bigger than the United States, just for comparison, in terms of how bloated. Now, to just compare that to the Canadian military, for example, okay, the CRA has about 59,000 employees. The Canadian military is supposed to have 68,000 regular forces. They don't. About 25% of that is absent. It's on the books, but there's nobody there, right? They haven't filled all those positions. So the CRA is actually bigger than the Canadian Armed Forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force combined. Like wrap that around your heads, people. That's disgusting of how big our revenue agency is. And when you consider foreign subversion and just what they're doing to people who supported the truckers, or these political witch hunts, they have a snitch line, supposedly. 99.9% of any of the stuff that comes into the snitch line, it's just all persecution. They don't get any money out of it, and yet this.
Oh no! Oh, we lost him again. Oh boy! All right. So what Rob is saying here is the Canada Revenue Agency. Yeah, he's correct to talk about those large numbers. Over 20,000 of them have been hired, and they're not even Canadian born. The vast majority do not speak English, and it's frustrating as hell to have to listen to someone that you can't understand, who's demanding money from you, and you're not even sure if it's a real phone call or not because of all the scams that come out of Nigeria and Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. But they do that on purpose because they know that when you get a phone call from someone that speaks horrendous English, you're going to get angry and you're going to hang up the phone. And the CRA, the way the Canada Revenue Agency screws you is that they send a letter. Then they make 3 phone calls. And those phone calls will most likely come from someone that doesn't speak English and that you do not understand. So you're going to hang up the phone because when I have to talk to someone from Canada that doesn't speak English, oh yeah, I toss a couple of insults out and I hang up the phone. I am not interested in talking to them. So when you hang up the phone, CRA, their policy is to make 3 phone calls to you, send you 1 more letter, and then just take your money out of the bank. That's what they do. So that is where you got to get a hold of me, everyone. You got to hire me. In Canada, I absolutely have to be your tax guy. Just head over here to my website, kevinjjohnston.com, book a consultation, and I'm going to build a tax strategy with you to get rid of the criminals at the CRA. I'm very proud of this, by the way. 2 women who used to work for the CRA, they quit the CRA because it was too stressful to deal with a toxic man like me. And yes, when I deal with them at the CRA, I'm quite toxic, unless the CRA agent begins the conversation being polite, in which case I'll change my demeanor to be polite, but I'm still going to ask a ton of questions. And I have all kinds of conversations, some of them that you've all already heard on freedomreport.ca, which is this website address right here, where these regional managers of the CRA are answering my questions, telling me, no, we don't put people in jail for owing tax. No, we don't sue Canadians because we don't make money. No, we don't seize their property because we don't make money. So that is the true fact there. The CRA does not do any of this stuff because it costs them money, and all they want to do is steal money with 20,000 new employees from third world countries. You should be disgusted by your country. You really should. And I honestly give these people a very difficult time when they get a little bit lippy, and believe me, they do. They think that because most white people have been conditioned to be afraid of someone who's not white yelling at them, I immediately start threatening them with deportation. And all of a sudden they start crying. It's wonderful. And that's when they get some beta cuck white dude to come on the phone. You can't talk to our staff that way. Like, yeah, I can. Maybe what you should do is get some English speaking people to work for you so that I don't have to bark at them and threaten them with deportation. Right? Don't be afraid of the Canada Revenue Agency. The IRS in the United States, different ball of wax. They have a whole bunch of tools at their disposal to punish you severely. Like they put the Blade actor, what's his name? Wesley Snipes. They locked him up for 3 years for what they called income tax evasion. So it's different in the United States than it is in Canada. Rob is back. Rob, we're down to our last 3.5 minutes here. Did you have a concluding statement for Canadians and even Americans about the state of affairs in banking? Go ahead.
Protect yourselves, folks. I don't think everybody realizes just how precarious the situation is. Thank goodness the expiry of the Bank Act was kicked ahead a little bit. But watch out. Yeah, because of us, but watch out. I know. And thank goodness there are people who are listening. I appreciate that. I really do. But please consider, moving over to provincially regulated financial institutions. Don't give Mr. Trudeau and the CRA that much power over you. Don't let them do that. If there's a run on banks and you lose your deposits because they're in federally regulated institutions, you don't want that. I don't want to see anybody lose their money that way.
Well, Rob, you're absolutely right. I don't want to see the same thing either. And I want to say once again, you're one of Canada's foremost banking and gold, silver economists, experts. Thank you for being here once again. It's always a pleasure to have you.
A joy to be with you. I apologize about the connections here in Saskatchewan, but it is what it is. I'm sorry.
No worries. We're not going to hold you accountable for it. We're going to hold the banks for not allowing capital to be had to expand. All right. Thanks for being here, Rob. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Wow. That's Rob Anders, everybody, member of Parliament in Canada for 18 years. He's, unfortunately for him, been in the same room with that maniac, Justin Trudeau. Rob has got an incredible career. He's got stories about the Canadian government galore. It was an absolute pleasure to have Rob giving me incredible lessons on how to run my campaign whilst running for Calgary. And for our American friends, everything that was done to Trump was done to me. There's me running for Calgary mayor right there. I had 11 such of these massive campaigns, yet the Canadian government somehow told me I only got 1,700 votes in that election, which is absolutely unbelievable. And for everyone else, they're right there, Instagram.com/Kevin J. Johnston X. They threw me out of another Instagram account. Please follow me there because there's going to be a lot of updates that I do on Instagram first, just because Instagram's still easier to use than most platforms. Although I hate Zuckerberg, it's still easier to use. Well, what a great show tonight, everybody. Want to thank you all for being here. And don't forget the Wednesday night Tax and Money show has been moved to Thursdays. So on Wednesdays, we're not doing the show anymore. We're just too busy helping clients with their tax problems. It's moved to Thursday. So the Real Estate Tax and Money show will be this Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time, right here on freedomreport.ca. That's it for tonight, everybody. My name is Kevin J. Johnston. I am Canada's biggest mouth and number one podcaster. I want to say thank you all for being here. You'll catch me every Tuesday on this show, 9 p.m. Eastern time, right here on freedomreport.ca. I love you all, and good night.